Greetings, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Reading Epic Threads. I'm your host, Patrick Gunnels, joining you from Houston, Texas, this April 10th, 2025 at 11:23 a.m. Central Daylight Time. I want to make an announcement. We are putting together the special of specials at tulipblooms.shop. The amazing special of the 25% off all unscented body butters has come to an end. The sales were absolutely amazing. We are going to be working overtime to fulfill every single order. Maybe we'll do it again before the end of May. Maybe not. I don't know, because it depends on how hot it gets. Right now, we're going to be pausing on soap. Pausing. Well, that just means that we're not going to be making all of these in the future. We're going to pick a few because I'm just going to be real honest with you. The ultra premium soaps, which is what these are, they're ultra premium, all natural, handmade by patriots for patriots. These things, you just can't charge $50 for a bar of soap. There's no way to do it. Even something like the Three Kings bar, which is frankincense, gold, and myrrh. Literally, frankincense, gold, and myrrh go into this. You can't charge $50 for a bar of soap. It's just not a thing. And so a little business like mine, bar soap is tricky. You can't really use it to make lots of money. It's a bit of a loss leader. So right now, as a way of incentivizing you to purchase our amazing premium products, the Castor Blend, Rainfall, Epic Moisture Creamy Body Butter, the amazing Vitamin C Serum, the Morning Dew Amazing Refreshing Gel, all of these premium products, maybe there are things on there you haven't tried yet. Whatever it is, and these soap bars, there's nothing like them in the world. You will never find soap bars like this. The rest of your life you'll go and you'll never find soap bars like this. Every single purchase of one of our mainline products, bam, instantly. All you have to do is add a soap, and at checkout, that soap will be free. You heard that right. The soap will be free. Just put it in your cart in addition to the other products that you're going to buy from tulipblooms.shop. Promo code Shapiro for an extra 10% off. Any orders above $150 in value get free shipping. Guys, these soaps, there's nothing like them in the whole world. We have so many of them. They use essential oils. They smell divine. They make your skin supple and soft. Now is your chance. And we're going to be doing this special until all of our existing soap inventory is gone. And when it's gone, it's freaking gone. We have like 30 different varieties of soap. We're only going to be bringing back a few of them. So do it now. tulipblooms.shop. Free bar soap giveaway. tulipblooms.shop, promo code Shapiro. All right. I'm going to read a disclaimer that I put together. And it goes like this, because of the subject of today's show. Let's not kid ourselves. The boomers dropped the ball so hard, it shattered the foundation of the greatest nation in human history. They inherited a shining city on a hill, a post-World War II America, a land of freedom, prosperity, moral clarity, and turned it into a debt-soaked, cultureless dumpster fire. These clowns abandoned their kids to be raised by the Brady Bunch reruns, worshipped at the altar of convenience with abortion as their bloody sacrament, and cheered like brain-dead lemmings while their Marxist professors tore down every sacred value their parents bled for on the beaches of Normandy. Boomers were the first to ditch honor your duty for follow your heart, and what did we get? A narcissistic cesspool of broken homes, a nation drowning in self-obsession, and bureaucrats who think drag queen story hour is the new Bill of Rights. They took the most prosperous country in the world and handed us a circus act run by clowns in three-piece suits. But here's the twist, and it's a big one. That's not you. You, my audience, 60% boomer, 100% patriot, stood as the glorious remnant, the ones who didn't compromise the values of America. You didn't trade freedom for a cushy retirement. You didn't bow to the gods of the New World Order. You saw through the lies. You rejected the narrative. You stood tall when the rest of your generation was busy sipping the Kool-Aid of globalism and moral decay. You backed a fellow boomer, Donald J. Trump, a man who builds skyscrapers, not excuses, a man who fights for this country instead of whining about his Social Security check. Trump is one of you, a boomer who gets it, who's been in the trenches exposing the deep state and making America great again while the rest of his peers were busy selling us out to the highest bidder. And let's get personal about this. My own father was one of you, a real deal boomer truther back in 1993. He was calling out the AIDS virus scam while everyone else was swallowing the media's lies hook, line, and sinker. He raised me to see through the charade, to laugh in the face of CNN's talking heads, and never to trust a suit with a teleprompter. He was a boomer. He was one of you. The kind who fights, the kind who digs for truth, the kind who doesn't just sit there and let the country slip through his fingers. His dying wish was to see Donald Trump in the White House, and he got that wish. He knew it before I did. He knew that Donald Trump was the answer, and I did not. So yeah, boomer generation as a whole, disaster. They turned America into a bad reality TV show. But you're the exception. You're the fire breathers, the patriots, the MAGA and Q warriors who held the line when everyone else joined the parade of cowardice and confusion. You're not the boomers who broke this country. You're the ones clawing it back, brick by brick, lie by lie, with the spirit of true American grit. When some blue-haired Gen Z kid sneers, okay, boomer, just smile. They're not talking about you. They're talking about the sellouts, the sheep, the ones who let this nation fall. But you're the boomer who fights like an American, the kind needed right now to take this country back. So let's do this. Let's read some epic threads and keep the fire burning. Well, I feel about that last part. The reason I read that to you is because, it's because I'm about to read an Erik Carlson piece that does hit the nail on the head in a lot of ways for me. I also know this. I know that those of you in my audience who are boomers, when I talk about the boomer generation and their terrible behavior, you already know I'm not talking about you. Different generations are known for different things, and the boomers are known for some really bad stuff. The millennials got some crap. What do you think? Gen X is known for apathy? I don't know. But what was ushered in under the Woodstock generation, the hippie generation, the abortion generation, was the beginning of something that has to be reversed. And whatever the cause, the propaganda, the TV, the weaponization of mainstream media occurred right as the boomers were being born. So I just want to make sure that nuance is understood. All right. All right, let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and read one from James Delingpole also, because I can't help it and because I love him. And even though he's kind of an ass, I'm going to read this one. It's called, Was the Resurrection Another PSYOP? From Delingpole.substack.com, or How You Can Be Sure That Christianity is the Real Deal. I'll put you immediately out of your misery. No, I do not for one moment believe the resurrection was a PSYOP. The only reason I posed the question was to respond to a series of essays by Agent 131711, Was Jesus' Crucifixion a Hoax? Whose clickbaity title, as you see, I have shamelessly plagiarized. I'm a big fan of Agent 131711's work, his deep dive essay series into subjects ranging from dinosaurs and chemtrails to the Pulse nightclub and Uvalde shootings. Plague doctors, musical frequencies, evergreen, and vitamin supplements are always extraordinarily well-researched, lavishly illustrated, and highly readable. Indeed, Wearing my conspiracy theorist's tinfoil tit fur for a moment, I find him so on the money on so many topics and so detailed and prolific in his output that I wonder how he can possibly be the one-man operation he claims to be. No one could be that good on their own, surely. And how did he get to be quite so good? Where does he acquire such high-level information? Could it be that he is a cabal insider, or a cabal of cabal insiders? Might he be a gatekeeper, limited hangout, a trap of some kind? Or am I just being paranoid and slightly envious? He's one of the few awake bloggers whose posts I consider absolutely essential reading. His Was Jesus' Crucifixion a Hoax series has, as you might expect, caused quite a stir among his readers. The agent, as I shall now call him so as to avoid having to retype all those digits, claims to have been raised in a fervently Catholic household and never to have questioned the Bible because, quote, questioning is something essentially forbidden in the Catholic faith. But now he has decided to subject Christianity to the same scrutiny he has applied to all his other conspiracy theories topics. Here is his pitch, quote, so let's say, hypothetically speaking, they misled us entirely on religion, and because we are dealing with very wicked people, they even misled us on who God is, if anything. Let's say, hypothetically, Christianity is just another cult, a very powerful, very profitable cult, but nonetheless a cult which, as cults are, was invented for no purpose other than control. What if it is just another way to take our time and money and steer us away from the truth while putting us into lifelong categories, sects, which require us to preach the teachings, recruit new followers, and avoid and condemn our fellow man who doesn't share our specific beliefs? What if this is just another plan to divide and conquer? What if, by misleading us, we can never reach a higher level, whatever that may be, because we spent our worldly lives believing in a talking snake, God appearing as a burning bush, Jonah living in a whale, the Nile River turning to blood, getting water from rocks, the fiery pits of hell, and arguing over what the mark of the beast is? What if? I then thought to myself, being that Jesus was a real person, I should research this just like I would with any other topic and see what I can find. So I decided to look into how Christianity actually came to be. I'm not referring to what the Bible tells us. I mean verifiable research. And it opened a massive can of worms. End quote. Back to James and his response. These questions are, of course, nothing new in awake circles. If I received a widow's mite every time I read someone claiming that we are living in a matrix, we were created by space aliens called the Anunnaki, the Old Testament is God, actually Satan, the Old Testament God is actually Satan, Jesus Christ was an ascended master and a great teacher, but just one mighty prophet among many, we are all many gods, and our true goal is to achieve Christ consciousness. The Bible is a Jewish conspiracy. The Bible is a Roman conspiracy. All religions are just control mechanisms. We invented all that scripture stuff because we couldn't cope with the fact that we're all going to die. Are there any I've missed? Then I'd be as rich as Joseph of Arimathea. As a Christian, I don't feel threatened by these narratives. This is partly because I don't find them intellectually persuasive, nor do I find their sources, see this piece I did on David Icke, for example, very credible. And partly because I believe God quite deliberately arranged the path to Christian understanding to be fraught with difficulty. He doesn't simply drop Christianity into your lap and make it such a no-brainer that it's impossible not to be a Christian. You have to earn your stripes, partly, yes, through a process of study, sifting of evidence, and rational deduction, but partly through something much more nebulous, anti-rational, and mysterious, the development of your personal faith. That is, you can't just bone up on your scripture, check that it all correlates with the historical records, and then say to yourself, right, that's it, I've finished my homework, job done. Christianity definitely stands up in the same way that we didn't go to the moon stands up. Nor can you go through the same process and conclude, wait, what? There are so many inconsistencies that no way does Christianity pass the test of rational scrutiny. Well, I suppose you can, because that's effectively what Agent 131711 has just gone and done in his latest essay series. What I mean is that this process is not nearly conclusive, as the agent seems to be implying that it is. One flaw in his process was neatly summed up in the comments below one of his articles. Annoyingly, I can't find it. Perhaps someone else can kindly help me. But it went something like this. If they can so quickly hide the evidence of what happened at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida in 2016, how can you be surprised at the lack of documentary evidence for something that happened in the Middle East nearly 2,000 years ago? So when I read the agent saying, quote, there is literally no documentation anywhere of Jesus, his miracles, his beef with the Jews, or anything at all until many years after his death, I'm not muttering to myself, well, that's Christianity done then. Rather, I'm thinking, hang on a second, the agent, you're kind of loading the dice here. Also, maybe even worse than that, for a supposed king of conspiracy theorists, you're actually coming across like a complete normie. As I've often been wont to say on my podcasts, because it's true, Christianity is the greatest of all the rabbit holes. That's because, besides all the official stuff you're taught at Sunday school or in scripture classes, or that you hear from your normie vicar, pastor, priest, preacher, whoever, there's loads more complicated, fascinating background detail, which you only learn about when you start digging beneath the surface. I don't mean stuff like, wow, Jesus is actually a hallucinogenic mushroom. I mean details like variations in translations and differing text sources about non-canonical sources like the books of Enoch, the historical, geographical, and socio-political contexts that aren't necessarily mentioned specifically in the Bible, but which can add much to our understanding of it. A good example of this is the identity of the Edomites and what became of them, and their relationship to Talmudic Judaism, not to mention the history of the church generally, and that of the various political factions which sought to twist Christianity to their own advantage. My point is that in the 2,000 years since Christ's crucifixion and resurrection, a number of very powerful vested interests have been doing their damnedest to obscure the truth of Christ's message and bury as much as possible of the physical evidence backing it up. They might well have destroyed manuscripts, including corroboratory documents from non-Christian sources. We know certainly that they have infiltrated and corrupted the translation process, whether in the form of the early Hebrew scholars who coined the unbiblical word Jew, or in that of the liner notes to the Schofield Bible. Oh, and of course, they gulled a lot of people into believing that the Turin Shroud had been carbon dated, and it was definitely a medieval fake, which it was not. If you take your scripture seriously, which I do, then of course it's no surprise that there are so many earthly, faux scholarly reasons out there for doubting the truth of Christianity. Whether you prefer to identify the enemy as the devil, or Lucifer, or the seed of the serpent, or the seed of the Nephilim, or the rulers of the darkness of this world, it all amounts to the same thing. There are powerful forces of evil abroad whose most cherished mission is to confound God and all his works. It follows inevitably that one of the main objects of their satanic interference will be anything pertaining to Christianity, whether it's texts or the ecclesiastical hierarchy or the background culture which supports or as currently mocks and diminishes Christianity. The world is run by evil people whose power largely depends on keeping us from the truth. All awake people know this, so it seems to me somewhat odd that the agent should be surprised that these evil people should have given the cover-up treatment to something as antithetical to their interests as Christianity. But maybe part of his difficulties lie in his Catholic upbringing, which appears to have so put him off from contemplating the numinous that he is only capable of understanding and explaining the world in earthly terms. This is fine as far as it goes. The agent is brilliant, almost unrivaled, at explaining the mechanism of the various conspiracies, but I don't think he has ever taken the supernatural element as seriously as he should. That is, the reason that the people behind these conspiracies do stuff like drink the blood of children is not simply that they're a bunch of sick, jaded perverts. It's a form of satanic sacrament. It keeps them young, yes. It's a useful form of compromat for controlling their fellows also, but most importantly, it's an act of affiliation with and reverence for the creature they consider to be their boss. These people are the spiritual heirs of all those child-sacrificing tribes that, in the Old Testament, God is continually urging the children of Israel to destroy. In return for this display of loyalty, the various evil entities that, with God's permission, have been granted a degree of power and autonomy on earth, lavish rewards on their servants: money, power, sexual conquest, the ability to ensnare, seduce, deceive, and crush the people who engage in occult practices. Don't do it just because if they get lucky, they might bump into Madonna at Kabbalah class, or because they like the robes and pointy hats, or because they've seen Harry Potter. They do it because, as has been known from the beginning of the Babylonian mystery religions, dark magic works and gets you what you want. The opposite of this dark magic is the holiness offered by Christianity, which, by the way, the bad guys who run the world loathe more viscerally and persecute more ruthlessly than any of the other supposedly viable alternative religions. Why is that, do you think? The best observation I've ever heard on the difference between these two forms of supernatural power, one bad, one good, was in the conversation I had a while back with Nathan Reynolds. Reynolds was born into one of the Illuminati bloodline families, was sexually abused from an early age, and trained up to be an assassin. Nathan Reynolds, interviewed by James Delingpole, link in the article, December 18th, 2024. Reynolds described to me some of the rewards you get in return for serving the forces of darkness. He was granted a power beyond anything most people could ever comprehend is real. I'm saying like dynamite explosive power, a power that makes you superhuman. But the price you pay for this quick fix solution to your earthly desires is eternal damnation, not to mention endless nightmares. When he renounced all this, he repented of his sins and became a Christian. He got to experience the other side of the equation for the first time. Quote, one side will offer you instant gratification, but the other is going to offer you a life of suffering. But the development of righteousness in its end, that will make you an amazing leader and a capable individual. Yep, that's Christianity. It's not the path you choose if you want a new Ferrari, or if you want to shag lots of women who aren't your wife, or if you want to get to the top of your business, whatever the cost. It's a slow burn thing, a tempering process designed to make you better and stronger by putting you to the test, which doesn't, on the surface, make it sound quite as sexy and fun as the bling lifestyle offered to dutiful servants of Satan. But then, that's partly the result of living in a culture which has been overwhelmed by the values of Satan, a culture which all the movies, all the TV shows, all the pop songs, all the stuff you're being showed on social media make you feel like you're missing out if you're not getting more instant money, more instant thrills, more instant sex with more partners of indeterminate gender. One of the things Christianity does is help you see past all that satanic cultural conditioning and to understand the world as it is and life as it ought to be lived, so that you are no longer under the spell of Satan's deception. But the secret of Christianity that really doesn't get talked about often enough, perhaps because Christians are coy about it, or perhaps because our satanically controlled information outlets, the media, publishing, the entertainment industry, etc., take great care to keep the secret suppressed, is that Christians get perks too. Sometimes these take the form of what my friend Laura Brett on our podcast about Psalm 63 calls God's winks. This is from 3 days ago. Laura Brett at dellingpole.substack.com. A God wink is when God gives you a little treat to show you that he loves you, or to tell you that you're on the right path, or to reassure you that your faith is not without foundation. Often Christians experience this in the early stages of their faith when they randomly open the Bible and discover that whatever text they see first offers extraordinarily relevant advice to their problem of the moment. Cue one or two puritanical comments on the evils of divination. Yes, I know. The comedian and self-described soldier of God, Alistair Williams, experienced a more spectacular God wink when, as he recalls on one of our podcasts together, he urgently needed £3,000 he didn't have to pay a tax bill. That same day, out of the blue, he received a check from a fellow Christian whom he'd never met with a note saying, "I've been told you need this." Later, as their faith matures and through prayer and meditation and fasting, ideally, they gain a deeper understanding of God's plans for them. They gain a powerful sense of purpose, almost to the point where, as Christ enjoins in Matthew's gospel, "Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself." They cease to worry about the future because they know that God has got it covered. Then, of course, if they feel called to take it all the way, they can achieve the sanctity of a St. Francis of Assisi or of Elder Paisios, the monk on Mount Athos, whose holiness was such that he could work miracles. On the subject of the latter, I can highly recommend a book called The Gurus, The Young Man and Elder Paisios, the 2008 memoir of a young Greek man who decided to put religion to the test by comparing his experiences on the holy mountain with his time spent among various gurus in India. The author, Dionysios Pharasiotis, recalls a number of instances where Elder Paisios healed the sick, even of supposedly terminal illness, drove out demons, and was able to describe in great detail places he had never been to, even to the point of being able to give directions. It's part of the satanic cultural shift against Christianity that where once the lives of the saints were a source of inspiration to God-fearing folk, we now mostly consider them as a superstitious myth to be scoffed at. I don't doubt that this undermining goes back a long way. Even in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, 1387 to 1400, you find a character called the Pardoner, who makes his living out of selling pig's bones, which he claims were the bones of departed saints. Anyway, I've gone on quite long enough. Now I'll give you the too long didn't read. Here are the two main reasons for my conviction that Christianity is not just another religion and not just a con trick, but a real deal. Neither has anything to do with the kind of evidence the agent seems to consider important. One, the evil people who run the world take it seriously. They treat it as their greatest threat, confirming what the Bible tells us about the fate of the ungodly. I think we can take it as read that people so powerful and with such access to so many secrets know what the deal is. Two, God makes his presence known to Christians all the time. He answers prayers. He even performs the occasional miracle. All Christians should know this. If you don't, then you're not yet doing it right. The silver squeeze. Get in before it's too late. For years, the elites have rigged silver markets, keeping prices suppressed while hoarding the real thing. Now the system is cracking. Supply is vanishing. The U.S. Mint can't source enough metal, and banks are scrambling to cover their shorts. Silver isn't just a hedge. It's the most undervalued hard asset with soaring industrial and investment demand. When the suppression breaks, prices won't just rise. They'll explode, but only for those holding physical silver. If you're still in paper silver, you could be left with nothing. Act now. Go to www.patricklikesgold.com and secure your silver before the panic hits. That is James Delingpole at Delingpole, DELINGPOLE, .substack.com. absolutely indispensable. And it's not like I agree. It's not like I agree with him all the time either. Absolutely brilliant, though. He was actually with us briefly on Quad Virum right after the stolen 2020 election. He is not a Trump fan. Just a reminder to those of you who might be showing up right now, we are dramatically, the fact is that we cannot sustain the number of types of soap that we currently have. We have an assload of different types of ultra premium soaps. And you can't charge $50 for a bar of soap. You just can't do it. So we're going to tamp down on the number of SKUs that we have for soap. Right now, you can take advantage of this. Right now, any order of one of our premium products, and that's, just anything that's not a bar of soap, basically, any order. Bam, put a bar of soap in your cart too. Why? Because it's going to be free. At checkout, it'll automatically reprice it to $0. And this is until we get rid of our inventory. I think we've got like 8 of these 3 Kings bars left. And I wanted to charge $50 for them because they're freaking ridiculously expensive to make. Frankincense, gold, and myrrh, all in. Check it out. While supplies last, order now, because what's in my storehouse right now, it's going to be gone, and then it's gone. And you'll see it in inventory too. It'll say sold out. So theoretically, this should go pretty smoothly. Now, for our main event, the reason I did that disclaimer at the beginning of the show was because we will be doing Erik Carlson's piece entitled Boomers. And with that, from Erik C., that's ERIKC, .substack.com, ERIKC.substack.com, Boomers, A Generation Lost Forever by Erik Carlson. I'm sure many reading the title think this piece is going to attack the boomers, and yes, you would be correct in thinking that. But first, I want to defend the minority of boomers who haven't fallen prey to the rhetoric, those who can see through the propaganda, mind control that have been unleashed on them their whole lives. If this describes you, understand, you are exceptional. Not that you are merely the exception. No, you are exceptional. They threw everything and the kitchen sink at you, and you are still standing, head up, chest out, not curled up in the corner, bitterly moaning, oscillating between anger and fear. I have no excuses for spending 88% of my life asleep under the mind control that all Americans are subject to. As a member of Generation X, I had the easiest path to knowing the truth. I had President Reagan for 8 years of my developmental years. The Department of Education was defunded all 8 of those years. I didn't have political correctness, critical theory, and the trans movement forced down my throat while I was trying to find my way in life. The neighbor kid down the street had 2 moms and nobody cared. People thought Boy George was weird, but they still bought his music and they still listened to it. When I was a teenager, being American was something that made you proud. I grew up in a time of relative peace. I never feared being drafted. My freedoms weren't being infringed upon. If I was told if you work hard, you'll get ahead. I grew up in a merit-based society. I grew up in a time of hope and opportunities. You could say I was sheltered, but in reality, the propaganda machine was just temporarily on hiatus. Today, through my work, I regularly interact with many boomers. And I have to say, the majority of them fit the negative stereotypes that Gen Z and the millennials have of them. The majority I interact with are negative and fearful. The majority drink all the Kool-Aid they can get their hands on. The majority are retired with seemingly nothing to do but sit in front of their TVs and absorb the fear porn and lies the mainstream media are pushing on them 24 hours a day. The majority of those I interact with despise Trump and hate everything about him and his supporters. They hate the things I say, but wrestle with the fact that I'm usually right. And my being usually right greatly benefits them financially. Many of these boomers make statements of support for marginalized groups on social media, in my opinion, to feel better about themselves. but never do they seem to lift a finger to get involved in those communities. Too busy soaking in CNN's lies to volunteer at a homeless shelter. Too busy pretending Doge was bad to volunteer at a woman's halfway house. Don't get me wrong, I don't care how retirees spend their time, but they shouldn't act like the government should take care of everyone while they aren't willing to lift a finger or chip in a dime. The want for a bigger government shouldn't be to rid you of the guilt you feel for having so much and doing so little. Understand and acknowledge that the younger generations don't have the same opportunities that you have had. They didn't have the opportunity to buy a house for $25,000 40 years ago. They aren't living without a mortgage or rent. Even being Gen X, my neighbor pays twice as much for his mortgage than I do because I bought my house just a decade earlier. The boomers are the last generation to commonly receive a pension when they retire. At Boeing, the employees who started before the year 2000 will receive or are receiving a considerable pension, usually larger than their Social Security. Those that started after the year 2000 will receive nothing. The same job, same everything, but one generation of people receive a pension, the other does not. It's not a level playing field. Forget about the actual financial benefits and opportunities the older generations have, and consider that many in the younger generations have no hope. There is no light at the end of the tunnel that gives them inspiration. They don't dream of traveling in retirement. They believe they will never own a house or ever be able to stop working. Nothing exposes what is in the hearts of a generation like a dip in the stock market. All of a sudden, the fear of losing one's Social Security sets in. Their IRA or 401k going down in value is unacceptable. It must go up at all times, even though this is not how the stock market works or has ever worked. Conservatives are jumping ship. Liberals are piling on. Insanity is prevailing, not because the stock market is fluctuating, but because it is happening under a president they despise. Where does all this hysteria come from? It comes from the fear of losing their wealth. I understand that many people have legitimate concern right now because they have too little saved. But in my opinion, much of the vitriol is coming from the people who have more money than they could ever spend. It seems the only thing that can inspire many boomers to get off their couches and stop staring at their TVs all day is the fear of losing their wealth. The fear of losing their wealth has caused them to take up picket signs and protest, not the atrocities of unnecessary wars or the abuse of children or the plight of the homeless. It wasn't until their net worth started to fall that many were inspired to take action. It wasn't supposed to be this way. In the past, retired people helped to raise their grandchildren. They were active and involved in their communities. They used some of their extra time and money to serve, to give back, to help out. Today, it seems like too many retirees only care about protecting their wealth. I understand why the majority of the boomer generation seem to have lost their minds. They have spent their entire lives being propagandized. Their youth in the 1960s was a giant psyop. From the hippies to the civil rights movement, to the women's rights movement, to the drug culture, to the Vietnam War, all of it contrived, manipulated. In the 1970s, half of their marriages ended in divorce. In the 1980s, they became yuppies, worshiping the almighty dollar. Today, many have become Karens, or the male version thereof, spewing out the propaganda they hear from their TVs, word for word. If you are a boomer, and what I described isn't you, I commend you. You are exceptional. But too many of your contemporaries exude the tendencies that I have mentioned. If what I described is you, then stop staring at your TV all day. Get out of your pajamas and leave the house. Get involved in your community. Find an organization to help out with. Give something back. You might find that you are getting back even more in return. I know I must sound overly critical, but over the past month, the only people that I've interacted with displaying outright insanity are, in fact, boomers. Listen to some of the things I've been told by boomers. Elon Musk called everyone who receives Social Security a parasite. Taylor Swift is moving to Canada because she can't live in a country run by Trump. This is evidence that he is destroying the country. A 70-year-old man told me this. Firebombing Tesla dealerships isn't domestic terrorism, it's protesting. Reciprocal tariffs, charging them what they charge us, will destroy the American economy. Doge is cutting payments to widows and their children. Trump is not a Christian. Trump is getting rid of Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. Children will no longer have access to an education. Public schools will no longer accept Black students. It would be one thing if these were 4-year-olds telling me this. Maybe they saw it on a cartoon or YouTube Kids. These are grown adults spewing this garbage that they believe to be the truth. According to them, it's all true because the TV said so. If you don't believe the things the TV says, then you're the one who's delusional. You're the one who's been brainwashed to not believe the TV. You're the one who can't accept the truth. You're the one who's crazy for not panicking. Why would the talking head on the TV lie? You are the conspiracy theorist for believing the country isn't imploding, even though nothing outside of their house would indicate that Armageddon is happening anywhere. There is no actual evidence to support their panic and fear. Winston Churchill, FDR was right when he said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. The fear they have is what justifies their fear. Circular logic. If someone presents them facts that refute their fear, the response is, I don't know about that, and immediately they jump into their next piece of propaganda. Never is it, oh, really? I guess I was wrong about that, or I hadn't heard that. That's encouraging. Or one would think that they like to hear everything is going to be fine. Your investments will bounce back pretty quickly. You're in no danger of losing your Social Security. In fact, it likely will become tax-free soon enough. The truth, even when it is encouraging, is something many boomers refuse to listen to. I understand wanting to believe something that isn't real because it is a pleasant or encouraging idea, but it is dumbfounding to reject the truth because it's too positive. When you only believe claims that are negative, you might consider the possibility that you are a broken person. Your mind is not functioning the way it was meant to. I wish this was just a small portion of the boomer generation, but from my recent personal experiences, it has been a majority. Boomers are 21% of the American population, yet they own 52% of the assets. Millennial and Gen X millionaires are more than twice as likely to pass on their wealth to the next generation while living than boomer millionaires. I can't see this as anything but hoarding their money. In fact, with less time to live, they are even more aware of how much they can afford to pass on than the younger generations. If you happen to be a boomer and you don't treat your money and possessions the way Gollum did in The Lord of the Rings, consider yourself blessed. If you find yourself being more like Gollum, understand the negative reaction from the rest of us. America needs what is happening today. If you don't see that, maybe it's time to turn your TV off during the day, maybe even get rid of your cable. Interact with real human beings. Use some of your time and money to support your community. If you aren't able or willing to do any of these things, the least you can do is stay out of the way while America is being saved. That's ericc.substack.com. Eric C, ERIKC. ERIKC.substack.com. Wonderful piece. I want to say something about it, though, referring to Eric. I know Eric personally, and one confounding variable there that I think needs to be accounted for, where Eric lives, in my opinion, geographically, is the closest thing the United States has to an open-air mental hospital. So bear that in mind. However, I don't really interact with any boomers other than my mother and people who watch this show. And those boomers are not the boomer stereotype the absolute opposite of the boomer stereotype. That is the boomer stereotype, though. Leftist, money-hoarding, hippie psychopaths. It's true. It is true. And that stereotype was earned. But it was also caused by being the first generation to get like the modern propaganda machine shoved up their ass, because that's some intense stuff. All right. That's our show, guys. Don't forget for an instant, not for one instant, the amazing deal that you are the first, well, the second, because I'm going to be offering this deal on Rambo too. I will have already been on Rambo by the time you see this. These soaps are the most ultra premium soaps in the world. This is the frankincense, gold, and myrrh Three Kings bar. Now, it's not a decorative soap. It's rock solid. It contains frankincense and myrrh essential oils and a glitter to it that we call the gold. It's actually titanium dioxide, so it's not technically gold, because if it were, then it'd be $100 bar. So I wanted to charge $50. There's no way to charge $50 for a soap. So here's the deal. Any order at tulipblooms.shop, add a soap to it because it's going to be free. At checkout, the system will automatically discount it 100%. Just the soap, free soap, until we run out of soap. And you will see how many soaps are still available. It'll say out of stock when they're gone. Get them all you can. Get the Three Kings first, because that's the priciest bar we've ever made. So just letting you know right now, go to tulipblooms.shop, get a free soap with every single purchase. All right. Wonderful. Wonderful times. Thanks to Eric Carlson and James Dellingpole for being so brilliant. Don't forget Eric, CERIKC.substack.com, and then Dellingpole.substack.com. Don't forget to check out readingepicthreads.substack.com. That's another one for you. I'm so excited. It's going to be a good day. And by the way, any of you boomers who would like to weigh in, please do at pgunnels@gmail.com. I really, really hope none of this is going to be in the form of, I'm a boomer and I'm not like that. Because, by the way, if you do say that, you are like that. Okay? If you don't understand the law of large numbers, then you are like that. All right. Just throwing that out there. Let us pray. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow.
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.